computer science and programming language Java, and today we will discuss the topic of polymorphism in arrays. So to illustrate this subject, I will tell you that I have a few electrical devices. So I have 4 different electrical devices. One is my phone, one is my tablet, another one is my watch, and the 4th one is my computer. So as you can guess, all of those different electronic devices have a few things in common. For example, all of those devices need some source of energy in order to function. This may be a battery or electricity, but they do need some kind of energy. So this is something that is common to all of those devices. Another common thing that is common to all of those electrical devices is that all of them have some form of communication, whether it's Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or some kind of other communication method. So looking at those commonalities among those electrical devices, the commonality of needing some energy source and the fact that they have some kind of communication method, seeing that they have these things in common make me realize that I can take a better approach, and I can write a parent class. I will call that parent class my devices, and in this parent class I will include methods regarding the energy source and regarding the communication ability. And so I will put those methods in the parent class, my devices, and then I will make the other classes, the class of telephone, the class of tablet, the class of the watch, and the class of the computer. I will create them as child classes, and they will inherit from the parent class those methods. And this way I am reducing the amount of code I should write. Now, if all of those 4 devices, they use the energy source or they use the communication method in the same way, they do it in the same way, they can use the same code. If they're really doing it in a similar way, it even will be more efficient if I will already in the parent class, my devices, I will already write the content of the code for those methods. And this way, all of the child classes, they will inherit these methods already with the code included, and they all can use the same code and the same method with no problem. But if I'm looking at some other functionality of those devices, specifically on the usage I'm doing with those devices, I can see that they're quite different from one another. For example, if I'm looking at the function of, let's call this method use, just to show that this is the usage that I'm doing with this device. So if I'm looking at the telephone, so the way I use my telephone is that I am performing phone calls and I receive messages, direct messages or text messages. If I look what kind of usage do I do with my tablet? So what I do with my tablet, the way I use it to surf the internet. And if I look at what I do with my watch, I use my smartwatch to gauge how much did I ran or walked and to what duration. And if I look what I do, how do I use my computer? Well, I use my computer to do my homework. So I can see that regarding the usage of all of those devices is quite different, but still all of them, I use them for something, but just the content of this usage is quite different. So what I'm going to do is, in the parent class, my devices, I'm going to include just an abstract method that is called use, meaning that this the code of the parent class will just include the signature of the method use, but it will not include any content. So I will write in the signature of that method the word abstract. So this is not going to be a method that includes content or code in the level of the parent class, my devices. But each one of the child classes that is going to inherit this abstract method, each child class is going to write its own to include its own code for that method use. So in the method, so the method use in the child class phone will include a code that explains and shows how I'm going to use this phone to make phone calls and send text messages. And the child class tablet is going to have also that code of the method use, and in the tablet it's going to say how I'm surfing the internet with it, and the code of the method use in the class that is called watch is going to include information about how I'm using it to gauge the distance that I ran, and the code in the method use in the child class computer is going to explain and going to show and include a code about how I'm using this computer to prepare my homework using this computer. So now I see that I have an abstract parent class. I called it my devices, and I have and the parent class that I called my devices, it's going to have in its signature of the class of the parent class my devices is going to have the word abstract, and this is because the parent class my devices includes at least one method that is abstract. The method use in the parent class my devices doesn't have any code in it, doesn't have any content, only a signature. So the parent class my devices should have in its signature, in the signature of the class, the parent class my devices, it should have in its signature also the word abstract, because this is an abstract class, because it includes an abstract method. The method use is abstract in the level of the parent class. So now that the parent class my devices is abstract and it has the word abstract in its signature, and if it would not have the word abstract in the class signature, the code would not compile, because if the parent class my devices has an abstract method, as in the method use, the signature of the class must have the word abstract, otherwise it will not compile. But now that the parent class has the word abstract in its signature, the result of this is that I cannot instantiate objects from the parent class my devices. So I cannot create objects of this parent class my devices because it has the word abstract in its signature. So let's say that somewhere in my code, I want to now create an array, and this array that I now want to create, I'm creating it and I'm declaring it as an array that is going to be filled with objects of the kind of my devices, the parent class, the abstract parent class. But how is this possible? Didn't I just say that there is no way to instantiate objects of this class, my devices, because it is abstract? Well, yeah, but still I can declare an array that, as if it is going to include objects of this kind of parent class, the abstract parent class my devices. I'm going to declare this kind of array. I'm going to even call it a name. I will call it devices array. But I must tell you that this array is not really going to include objects of the abstract parent class my devices, since it is not possible, but it will include objects of the children of the children of that abstract parent class, because the child classes of that parent class is not abstract. So I can create objects of the kind of the child class, because they are not abstract classes. So this is exactly what I'm going to do. Somewhere in my code, I'm going to initialize this array, and I'm going to specify exactly what are the objects that each of the indexes in the array includes. So I decide that this array will be an array of 4 objects, and I decide that the first object, it's going to have the index 0, the first index, is going to be a new object that I'm going to create of the class phone, which is a child class of the parent class My Devices. And the second object, it's going to be in the index 1, is going to be an object of the child class Tablet. And the third object in the index 2 is going to be an object of the child class Watch. And the fourth and last object in this array, and it's going to have the index 3, is going to be an object of the child class Computer. So now that I have this array, and I can now write somewhere in my code, wherever I want, I can write a for loop, and if I want to, and this for loop is going to run all over all of the objects in this array, starting at 0 and ending at the last index, at the last object. And what I'm going to do in the code that I'm writing, on each one of those objects in the array, and I'm going to run over all of them using my for loop, I'm going to call that method use. And it seems that all of those objects are I'm going to call the same, it seems like it's going to be the same method. I'm going to call the method use on each one of those objects. However, since the method use is different in each and one of those objects of the child classes, it's different in each one of them, then even though in this for loop it seems that I'm calling the same method use on each one of those objects, since each one of those objects has a different content and a different code for the method use, actually what's going to happen is that every iteration of this loop, a different thing is going to happen. So when the method use is going to be called on the first object in index 0, which is a phone, the thing that is going to happen is, the code that is going to run is that I will use this phone to make phone calls and to send text messages. Then when the index is increased by 1 in the for loop, and we are now handling the object of the type tablet, the method use that is being called is going to engage this code that shows that I am using the tablet to surf the internet. Then when the index is being increased by 1, and now we're handling the third object in index number 2, and this object is of the type of a watch, what is going to happen when we call the use, the method use on it, we're going to gauge how much I ran and to what distance. And in the last object, which is of the type of computer, when we call the method use on this object, what is going to happen is the code that will run is the code of the method use that is written in the class of a computer, which means that it is the code that expresses the fact that I'm using the computer to make my homework, to prepare my homework. So this is how we see that in one array that it seems that this array includes object of the parent class My Devices, which is abstract. What happened is that we're filling this array with objects that are actually objects of the child class of the parent class. It's the child class, and it has there, it's filled with objects that are possible to instantiate, because they are not abstract. The child classes in our case are not abstract, so we could create objects of those child classes. And then when we call the same method, it's actually not the same method that is going to run, but each object is going to call its own method, its own code to the same method name, but it has a different code to each object. So I hope you find this explanation about polymorphism in arrays interesting. Thank you for watching.